The universe narrowed to three things: the thudding bass line of the National in my earbuds, the gritty chill of a Chicago October evening against my cheeks, and the warm, insistent pressure of a hand on my forearm. I'd been walking home from the library, my brain pleasantly fuzzy from 6 hours of annotating articles on suburban land use policy. My route was a straight, boring shot down Clark Street, well-lit, populated, the kind of street you're supposed to feel safe on. My head was down, my world a private movie scored by Matt Berringer's baritone. The grip wasn't violent, it was precise. A man's hand, clad in a black leather glove, closed around the sleeve of my peacoat just below the elbow, pulling me to a gentle but unyielding halt. My head snapped up, the music now a distant, tinny irritation. He was already close, leaning in as if to ask for directions. He was maybe 50, with a face that was all weathered planes and quiet intensity. He wore a dark, nondescript jacket. His eyes, a pale, unsettling gray, held mine. There was no menace in them, only a profound, urgent seriousness. He didn't shout, he didn't even speak at a normal volume. As the city noise and my forgotten music swirled around us, he brought his lips close to my ear. His whisper was sandpaper rough and crystal clear, cutting through everything. Listen to me. You need to turn around, walk south to the red line, get on the first train, and don't get off until you're outside the city. Do not go home, do not use your phone. Do it now, and don't make a scene. He released my arm as suddenly as he'd taken it. He didn't step back, he just held my gaze for one more heartbeat, his message hanging between us like a physical object. Then he turned and walked briskly away, melting into the stream of people heading toward the L station without a backward glance. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, a statue of confusion. People flowed around me, a river parting around a stone. The bass line in my abandoned earbuds thumped uselessly against my sternum. My first coherent thought was, crazy person. My second, colder thought, that didn't feel crazy. There was no theatrics, no religious ranting, no wild eyes. His delivery had been as calm and measured as a pilot giving pre-flight instructions. Do not go home, do not use your phone. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold crawled up my spine. I fumbled my phone out of my pocket. The screen glowed, a portal to normalcy. I could call the police. I could call my roommate, Zoe. I could pull up Google Maps and prove to myself that my apartment was just 7 blocks away, that this was all a bizarre misunderstanding. Do not use your phone. The whisper replayed in my head, a sinister loop. Why? Was it being tracked? Was that paranoid? But the man didn't seem paranoid. He seemed informed. I looked north toward my apartment. Warm yellow windows glowed in the dusk. My books were there, my bed, my leftover pasta. Safety. Then I looked south toward the red line station he'd indicated, a gaping maw of fluorescent light and rushing sound. Before someone else notices you. The phrase was the hook. It wasn't before I hurt you, it was someone else. He wasn't the threat, he was the warning, which implied a threat existed, one that hadn't noticed me yet. Logic warred with a deep primal instinct. Logic said, go home, lock the door, call the cops, report a creepy guy. Instinct, a low drumbeat of fear, said he knew what he was talking about. A group of laughing students jostled past me, breaking my paralysis. I made a choice, not out of courage, but out of a sheer, overwhelming desire to make the creepy feeling stop. If I followed his instructions, the weirdness would be over. I'd take a train to Evanston, have a weird story to tell Zoe, and Uber home. It was a ridiculous hassle, but it would prove it was nothing. I turned south. I pulled my earbuds out, letting the cord dangle. The city's real soundtrack rushed in, honking, chatter, the distant wail of a siren. Every person I passed now seemed like a potential vector of the unnamed someone else. The man checking his watch, the woman talking loudly on her phone. Were they noticing me? What was there to notice? I was just Maya Phillips, grad student, 5'6", brown coat, brown hair, utterly unremarkable. I descended into the red line station, the smell of stale urine and electricity hitting me. I bought a ticket with cash from my wallet, my fingers clumsy. Do not use your phone. I kept it tucked deep in my pocket like a radioactive stone. On the platform, I stood back from the edge, my heart hammering. A train roared in. I got on, finding a seat in a relatively empty car. As the doors hissed shut and we lurched into the tunnel, I felt a bizarre sense of relief. I was following the script. The script would lead to safety, to the end of this story. But as the stops ticked by, Fullerton, Belmont, Addison, the relief curdled into a nauseating doubt. What was I doing? I was on a train heading away from my life because a stranger whispered to me. This was insanity. I should get off at the next stop, call an Uber, and go home. I looked around the car. A tired-looking man in hospital scrubs, a teenager glued to his phone, a woman with 2 overstuffed grocery bags. Normal people, living normal lives. I was the only crazy one here. The train surfaced at Wilson, the sudden flash of the evening sky startling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. The vibration felt like an electric shock. Against every nerve screaming in protest, I pulled it out. It was from Zoe. Zoe, hey, where are you? Your creepy friend is here again, lurking outside the building. Do you want me to call the cops? The blood drained from my face. My creepy friend? I had no creepy friend. Zoe knew all my friends. She was meticulous. If she said creepy friend, she meant someone had been there before, asking for me, lurking. The train screeched into the Morse station. The doors opened. The cool evening air washed over me. Do not go home. The stranger's whisper wasn't a paranoid fantasy. It was a bulletin, and I was now holding proof that the threat wasn't just in my head. It was outside my apartment door. I didn't get off. The doors closed. The train pulled away, carrying me further north, away from everything I knew. The script was real, and I had no idea what the next line was or what was waiting for me when the final curtain fell. The train became a metal womb, hurtling me into the unknown. Each stop, Loyola, Granville, Jarvis, felt like a mile deeper into a different life. Zoe's text glowed on my screen, a pixelated anchor to a reality that was rapidly disintegrating. Your creepy friend is here again. Again. The word was a chisel, cracking the world open. This wasn't a one-time event. Someone had been watching my home, more than once, and a stranger on the street knew about it. My fingers trembled as I typed a reply, my mind screaming the warning, do not use your phone. But I had to. Zoe was in my apartment. Me. Do not go outside. Lock the door. Do not answer for anyone. Call the police. Tell them there's a suspicious person loitering. Don't mention me. I hit send, a violation of the strange man's prime directive, but his rules were for my survival, and right now, Zoe's survival felt more urgent. Her reply was almost immediate. Zoe, police are on the way. What is happening? Are you okay? Where are you? Me. Not sure. Not home. Be safe. We'll explain later. I powered my phone off. The screen went black, and with it, my last tether to a rational universe. I was alone with the rumble of the train and the deafening roar of my own thoughts. Who was outside my apartment? Who was the man in the glove? And what had I done to get noticed? I ran through my life like a forensic accountant. I was a second-year master's student in urban planning. My research was terminally boring, zoning law variances in post-industrial suburbs. My father was a retired high school teacher in Ohio. My mother worked for a nonprofit. No secret inheritances, no whistleblowing, no jealous exes with a sinister edge. I paid my bills, I liked indie rock, I hated cilantro. I was a background character. The train reached its terminus, Howard, the end of the line. The doors opened with a sigh. I was shepherded out with the last few passengers into the stark, fluorescent light of the transfer station. This was it. I was outside the city, as instructed. Now what? The man had said not to get off until I was outside the city. He hadn't said what to do then. Panic, a cold, slick thing, started to climb my throat. I had no plan, no destination, no phone, and about $80 in cash. I followed the signs for the yellow line, the Skokie Swift, a short shuttle to the suburbs. It felt like movement, and movement felt like safety. I bought another ticket with cash, my hands shaking so badly the clerk gave me a concerned look. On the nearly empty shuttle, I tried to think. A motel. I needed an anonymous, pay-by-cash motel for the night, somewhere to hide and think. Skokie. It was close, faceless. I could find one near the station. The shuttle deposited me in a clean, quiet, and utterly alien suburban downtown. It was barely 8 p.m., but the streets were quiet. The storefronts were dark. The normality of it was surreal. I felt like a ghost walking among the living, a piece of urban chaos accidentally dropped into a vacuum-sealed world. I walked, my senses hyper-alert. Every slowing car was a threat. Every person walking a dog was a potential scout. I found a place called the Skokie Lodge, 2 blocks from the station. It was a low, beige building that promised neither luxury nor questions. The neon vacancy sign hummed. The lobby smelled of industrial cleaner and old cigarettes. A bored-looking man in his 60s sat behind plexiglass. 45 plus 20 deposit, cash, no parties. I slid 65 through the slot. One night. He handed me a key attached to a large green diamond of plastic. Room 114, around back. Checkouts at 11. Room 114 was a cave of brown and orange. The bedspread was shiny and cold. I locked the door, chained it, and pushed the rickety desk in front of it for good measure. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, my coat still on, and finally let the full, crushing weight of the situation descend. I was hiding in a motel room in Skokie. Someone dangerous was at my home. A stranger had intervened. I had no idea why. The silence was absolute. No city hum. No Zoe watching TV in the next room. Just the faint buzz of the bathroom light and the frantic hammering of my own heart. Think, Maya. What do you have? I had the man's description. Pale gray eyes, leather gloves, a calm, urgent voice. I had Zoe's text, creepy friend again. I had my own uneventful life, which was clearly not uneventful at all. I needed information. I needed to know who was at my apartment. That meant turning my phone back on, which felt like lighting a flare in the middle of a dark ocean. But I had to risk it. I powered it on, holding my breath. It buzzed to life. No calls. A string of texts from Zoe. Zoe, cops came, talked to the guy. He said he was a process server looking for you, had a photo. Cops told him to leave. He left. Process server for what? Are you being sued? Zoe, you're scaring me. Call me. Seriously, where are you? A process server. The words were supposed to be a relief, legal, mundane, but it didn't fit. Process servers don't lurk. They show up, serve papers, and leave. They don't prompt random strangers to pull you off the street with apocalyptic warnings. And they certainly don't elicit the sheer operational terror I'd seen in the gray-eyed man's face. I texted Zoe back. I'm safe. Don't tell anyone you heard from me. Not the cops, not anyone. The process server story is a lie. I don't know what is happening. I'll contact you when I can. I love you. I powered the phone off again, my breath coming in short gasps. A lie. It was all a lie. I lay back on the stiff bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The rules of my disappearance were becoming clear, written in fear and instinct. 1. Stay offline. My digital self was a beacon. 2. Stay moving. Static targets are easy to find. 3. Trust no one. The gray-eyed man was an exception, and he was gone. 4. Find the why. Until I knew why I was a target, I was just an animal running in the dark. But how? I couldn't research without a computer. I couldn't ask questions without revealing myself. Then I remembered. The library. The old microfiche archives at the university library where I'd spent today. They had local newspaper archives going back decades. Offline, anonymous, a place where a student with a notebook wouldn't look out of place. It was back in the city, a risk, but it was the only source I could think of that didn't require a digital trail. I had to go back. The thought made me want to vomit. But the man on the street hadn't told me to leave forever. He'd told me to leave before someone else noticed me. The threat was specific, immediate. Maybe it was tied to my location at that moment, or my routine. Going to the library at a different time, breaking every pattern, maybe that was the key. Not just hiding, but becoming unpredictable. I looked at the motel key. This room was a trap, a place they'd expect a scared person to hole up. I couldn't stay. I grabbed my bag, moved the desk, and unlocked the door. The suburban night was cold and silent. I walked back to the station, a shadow among shadows, and bought a ticket back toward the city. I was breaking the letter of the stranger's law by returning, but I was following its spirit. I was trying to understand, and in this new, terrifying game, understanding was the only weapon I had. The rules of disappearing weren't about vanishing. They were about changing the game so completely that the people looking for you no longer even recognized the board. The train back into the city felt like descending into a lion's den. Every fluorescent-lit station was a potential ambush. I got off at Jackson, deep in the loop, far from my usual haunts. The library was a fortress of limestone and knowledge, its massive doors a promise of temporary sanctuary. It was after 9 p.m., but it was open late for finals. Students with the hollow-eyed look of caffeine and despair shuffled in and out. I became one of them. I went straight to the periodicals desk. The librarian, a woman with kind eyes behind thick glasses, didn't look up from her monitor. Microfiche and newspaper archives are in the basement, B12. Sign in at the desk down there. The basement was a different world, cold, hushed, smelling of dust and old paper. A single student sat in a pool of light, headphones on. The attendant at the desk, an elderly man with a cardigan, just nodded as I scribbled a false name and a meaningless student ID on the clipboard. The archives were a labyrinth of metal cabinets. I needed a starting point. Process server. The lie had to be built on a sliver of truth. What legal reason would someone have to hunt me? I wasn't being sued, I had no criminal record, but maybe family? My parents were ordinary, but my father had a brother, my Uncle David, who was the family mystery. He'd left Ohio when I was a kid. Went out west, my dad would say, his tone closing the subject. There were no pictures, no stories. He was a ghost. I had never thought much about him. I pulled the drawer for the Chicago Tribune, starting 5 years back. I didn't know what I was looking for. My name? Phillips was common. David Phillips? I began scanning the blurry, backwards pages on the microfiche reader, the greenish light the only illumination in my carrel. Headlines about politics, sports, crime. The world moved on, oblivious. An hour in, my eyes burning, I almost missed it. Not a headline, a small 2-inch obituary in the Metro section from 3 years prior. David Arthur Phillips, 52, passed suddenly on October 17. A lifelong resident of Chicago, he was a respected consultant, survived by a brother, Robert, of Dayton, Ohio. Private services were held. Chicago? He hadn't gone out west. He'd been here. A consultant. The vagueness was a red flag. And he died 3 years ago. Why would that matter now? I noted the date and kept digging, my pulse a little quicker. I switched to the Chicago Sun-Times archives, searched his name. Nothing else. No follow-up, no feature, no scandal. Frustration mounted. I was chasing a ghost with a ghost story. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. Think. The man on the street intervened today. Something triggered it. Was it the process server making his second attempt? Was it me, specifically walking that route at that time? Maybe it wasn't about me. Maybe it was about what I had. I thought of my apartment. My laptop was there, my external hard drive with all my research, and my scanned family photos. My dad had given me a box of old pictures to digitize last Christmas. I'd done it lazily, dumping them onto the drive. Could there be something in those photos? Something about Uncle David? It was a thread, thin as spider silk. I needed to see those photos, but going home was suicide. My laptop was a beacon. The hard drive, though, it was just a small black rectangle, if I could get in and out fast before any watchers returned. It was a terrible, desperate idea, but the archives had given me a name, a connection. David Phillips, Chicago, consultant. Suddenly, the vague threat had a shape, a history. My unknown uncle was a clue, and clues lived in my apartment. I left the library just before closing, the cold air a shock. I moved with purpose now, not just fear. I took a circuitous route, changing L lines twice, watching reflections in dark windows. I got off a stop early and walked the last mile through quiet residential streets, my senses screaming. My building came into view. It looked ordinary, quiet. No strange cars, no loitering figures. The police visit had likely spooked them, whoever they were. I used my key in the outer lobby, then the inner door. The familiar smell of lemon cleaner and carpet hit me. Home. It had never felt much like a trap. I took the stairs 2 at a time, avoiding the creaky second step. My door was locked. I listened, ear against the wood. Silence. I unlocked it and slipped inside, not turning on the lights. The blue glow of Zoe's laptop charger lit the living room. She was asleep, her door closed. I moved like a thief in my own home. In my bedroom, I went straight to my desk, unplugged the external hard drive, and shoved it into my bag. My eyes swept the room. What else? The box of physical photos was on my closet shelf. I grabbed it. As I turned to leave, my gaze fell on my bedside table. A book, a novel Zoe had lent me. Sitting on top of it was a small white business card. It hadn't been there this morning. My blood went cold. I picked it up. Plain, heavy cardstock. No logo, just a name and a number laser printed in a clean font. Galvin, 773-555-0187. That was all. No title, no company. Galvin. The name meant nothing, but its presence screamed everything. Someone had been in my room while Zoe was home. They left a calling card. Not a threat, but an announcement. We can reach you anywhere, even here. The violation was absolute. It wasn't just my safety that was gone, it was the illusion of any private space. They weren't just lurking outside, they were inside the lines of my life, moving through the margins I thought were safe. I pocketed the card, my hands ice. I had to get out, now. As I crept back through the living room, a floorboard groaned. Zoe's bedroom door opened a crack, her sleepy face appearing. "Maya?" she whispered, squinting. "What are you doing?" "I can't explain," I whispered back, my voice tight with panic. "Take this." I shoved a hastily scribbled note into her hand, the Skokie Lodge's address and room number, a mistake I immediately regretted but had no time to fix. "If you don't hear from me in 24 hours, go there, get the box and hard drive from the front desk, and take it to my dad. Don't call the police, just go to Ohio." Her eyes widened, full of confusion and fear. "Maya, what?" "I love you, Zoe. Lock the door behind me." I didn't let her answer. I slipped out into the hall, hearing the deadbolt click shut a second later. I didn't run. I walked, calmly, out of the building and into the night, the hard drive and photo box heavy in my bag, Galvin's card burning a hole in my pocket. I had gone from being a target to being a thief of my own history, with a ghost for an uncle and a phantom named Galvin leaving notes on my nightstand. The stranger's warning was correct, but incomplete. The danger wasn't just about being noticed, it was about what happened once you were seen. They didn't just watch, they entered, they left tokens. They made it clear you were already caught in a web, and the only thing left to discover was the spider's name. I was no longer just running, I was collecting pieces of a puzzle, and with each piece, the terrifying picture of why was beginning to form in the darkroom of my fear. The Skokie Lodge was no longer safe. They had my roommate's note. The front desk clerk had seen my face. It was a node in a network I now knew could be breached. I walked for an hour, my bag cutting into my shoulder, until I found a 24-hour laundromat in a nondescript neighborhood. It was brightly lit, warm, and most importantly, anonymous. The rumble of dryers was a white noise curtain. I claimed a corner chair between a mountain of unfolded towels and a sleeping man in a bear's hat. Here, surrounded by the mundane ritual of cleanliness, I examined the spoils of my burglary. First, the box. I lifted the lid. The scent of old paper and attic dust wafted out. Photos of my dad with hair, my mom in flared jeans, my childhood Christmases. I sifted gently, my fingers seeking the outlier. Near the bottom, I found it. A photo that didn't fit. It was a Polaroid, its colors faded to a sickly orange. Two young men in their 20s, arms slung over each other's shoulders, standing in front of a gleaming dark sedan. One was my father, Robert, his smile wide and unguarded in a way I'd never seen. The other had the same strong jaw and dark hair, but his smile was tighter, his eyes shaded by the brim of a baseball cap. On the back, in my grandmother's looping cursive, Robbie and David, 87, Chicago. Chicago, 1987, the year before I was born, the year my dad visited his brother here and, according to family lore, decided city life wasn't for him, returning to Ohio for good. I stared at David's shaded eyes. The consultant. What did he consult on? I dug deeper. Beneath the photo was a folded, brittle newspaper clipping, not an obituary, a business section article from the Tribune, dated 1995. The headline, Midwest Data Solutions Wins State Contract for Secure Archives. The article was dry, about a small tech firm securing a deal to digitize sensitive but non-classified state records. The CEO quoted was a man named Arthur Greer, but in the accompanying photo of the management team, standing slightly apart from the suited men, was my Uncle David. The caption read, David Phillips, Security Liaison. Security liaison, a consultant to a company digitizing state archives in the mid-90s, the dawn of the digital age? A cold finger traced my spine. I put the photo and clipping aside and plugged the hard drive into a public computer terminal meant for laundry patrons to pass the time. It was offline, thank God. I navigated to the folder of scanned photos. I'd scanned the Polaroid and the article, but there were other photos of David I hadn't remembered physically seeing. A few from what looked like a company picnic, another of him at a desk, a large boxy computer monitor behind him, and one, taken from a distance with a long lens, of him getting into a car with a man whose face was turned away. The metadata on the scans showed I'd done them all in one batch last January. But at the end of the folder, there was a file I didn't recognize, not a photo, a PDF, scanned not from a photo, but from a document, dated 2 years ago, 6 months after David's obituary. My breath hitched. I opened it. It was a single page, a photocopy of a handwritten ledger, columns of dates, initials, and sums of money, 4- and 5-figure sums. At the top, scribbled in the same hand, was a heading, MDS Side Projects, Consultant Fees, DP, MDS, Midwest Data Solutions. The last entry was 3 years ago, a month before David's death. Next to it, in different ink, was a scrawled note, Final Delivery, Lakeview Box 774. A ledger, payments for side projects, a box number. This wasn't a family memory, this was evidence, and I had scanned it without realizing what it was, tucked among pictures of birthday cakes and vacations. My dad had given me a box of old family photos, but he must have thrown in a folder of David's things from when he cleared his brother's apartment after his death. He wouldn't have looked closely, he'd want to be rid of it, and I, the dutiful digital archivist, had scanned it all. The unseen web began to glimmer in the grim fluorescent light of the laundromat. My Uncle David hadn't just been a consultant, he'd been involved in side projects for a data company with state contracts. He'd been paid under the table. He'd died suddenly, and he'd left a record of a final delivery in a storage box. And now, 2 years after his death, someone was very interested in his niece, not to serve papers, to find something. Something David had, something he might have left behind, something I might have inadvertently digitized and saved on a hard drive. The man on the street, the one with the gray eyes and gloves, he wasn't a guardian angel, he was a player, someone who knew the game was afoot and that I, the clueless niece, was about to become a casualty or a pawn. His warning wasn't altruism, it was crowd control. He was clearing the board. And Galvin, the card left on my nightstand, was Galvin from the company, MDS, cleaning up old messes, or was Galvin from another side, a client, a rival, law enforcement? The dryers thumped to a stop. The silence was sudden. The sleeping man in the bear's hat snorted awake, gathered his clothes, and left. I was alone. I had 2 choices. I could run further, deeper into the void, a rabbit forever chased, or I could try to understand the trap so completely that I could find its open jaw. Lakeview 774. It was an address, a destination, the final delivery. Whatever David had left there was the key. It was also the most obvious trap imaginable. They'd be watching it, but they'd be watching for a scared girl running in the dark. They wouldn't be watching for something else. I looked at the hard drive, this little black rectangle that held a ghost's secrets. It was the bait, and the only way to control a trap is to spring it on your own terms. I copied the crucial files, the ledger PDF, the photos of David, onto 3 cheap USB drives I bought from the battered vending machine in the laundromat. I mailed one to my father's post office box in Ohio with a cryptic note only he'd understand. I hid another in the ceiling panel of the laundromat's bathroom. The third I kept. Then I took the original hard drive and the box of physical photos. I walked to the Chicago River, its dark water oily under the city lights. Without ceremony, I dropped the hard drive into the water. It sank without a sound. I scattered the physical photos of David, the clipping, the Polaroid, into a dumpster behind a restaurant. I was destroying evidence, but I was also destroying the expected evidence. Now the only complete digital copy was in my pocket, on a $10 USB stick, and the only people who knew the ledger mentioned Lakeview Box 774 were me and whoever was looking for it. I became a ghost with a purpose. I used cash from an ATM, a risk but a calculated one, to buy a dark baseball cap, a generic hoodie, and a pair of reading glasses from a drugstore. A crude disguise, but it changed my silhouette. It was 4 a.m. The city was in its deepest sleep. I took trains and buses, a zigzagging route to Lakeview. The storage facility was a sprawling, neon-lit complex of garage doors. It was open 24/7 with keypad access. Box 774 was in a dimly lit corridor on the 3rd floor. I didn't go near it. I found a nook with a view of the corridor, hidden behind a pallet of moving boxes, and I waited. My phone was off. I had only the watch on my wrist and the cold concrete floor beneath me. I waited for 2 hours. The silence was broken only by the distant hum of a freezer unit. Then, at 6:17 a.m., I heard it. The soft snick of the security door at the end of the hall. Not the loud bang of a customer, but a controlled, quiet entry. 2 men appeared. They moved with a relaxed professional confidence that was more frightening than any skulking around. One was tall, with a build that spoke of gym time. The other was shorter, wiry, scanning the corridor. Neither was the gray-eyed man. They went straight to 774. The taller man worked a lockpick with efficient, practiced motions. The door rolled up with a quiet rumble. They didn't go in. The shorter man shone a penlight inside. I saw his posture change, a slight stiffening of disappointment. He said something to his partner, too low to hear. The tall man pulled out his phone, took a picture of the empty unit, then let the door roll shut. They left as quietly as they came. It was empty. David's final delivery was long gone, but they were still checking, which meant they didn't have it, and they thought I might have it or might lead them to it. As the sky lightened to a dirty gray, I finally moved. I didn't go to box 774. I walked to the facility manager's office. Using a story about being a niece trying to settle a late uncle's account and David's obituary as shaky proof, I convinced the sleepy manager to look up the unit. Yeah, David Phillips, unit 774, paid yearly, auto-renew, still paid up for another 8 months. Anyone else on the account? Nope, just him. You want to shut it down? There's a form. No, I said, just curious, thanks. I walked out into the dawn, the USB drive a heavy secret in my pocket. The web was no longer unseen. I had seen its strands. A dead uncle, a data company, a missing delivery, and 2 men in the night checking an empty box. I was no longer just a target. I was a participant. Dawn broke over a city that no longer felt like mine. The gray light revealed a world stripped of its innocence. A coffee shop was a potential surveillance point. A passing glance from a stranger was a threat assessment. I was a ghost with a heartbeat, carrying a secret worth killing for on a plastic stick in my pocket. The men at the storage unit weren't Galvin. They were muscle, sent to verify. Galvin was the mind, the one who left polite, terrifying calling cards. And the gray-eyed man with the gloves? He was a wild card, a third faction in a game I still didn't understand. I needed to stop being the rabbit. To do that, I had to understand what the fox wanted. The ledger pointed to side projects. David's security liaison role at Midwest Data Solutions, MDS, gave him access. What kind of side projects would a data company security guy run in the 90s? Data theft? Corporate espionage? The state contracts mentioned in the article meant he could have accessed sensitive, if not classified information, personnel files, infrastructure schematics, early digital land records. Lakeview Box 774 was empty. The final delivery was gone. But the ledger existed. I had it. And if I had it, maybe David had left another copy. Or maybe the delivery wasn't a thing, but information delivered somewhere. The box could have been a dead drop, cleared out years ago. The USB drive was my only leverage, but leverage is useless unless someone knows you have it. I found a different, seedier internet cafe, paying cash for an hour on a terminal that smelled of stale sweat and fried food. I created a new encrypted email account. Then I drafted 2 messages. The first was to the email address I'd found for Arthur Greer, the former CEO of MDS from the 1995 article. His current company was a bland consulting firm. The email was simple. Subject: regarding David Phillips and MDS side projects. Mr. Greer, I am in possession of a scanned ledger detailing irregular consultant payments to David Phillips during his tenure at MDS. I believe this may be of interest to you or your legal team. I can be reached at this address. I attached a single cropped image from the ledger, just enough to prove it was real, not enough to give anything away. The second email was harder. I had no address for Galvin, just the name on the card. But Galvin had found me. Maybe I could make him find me again, on my terms. I used the same new account. Subject: for Galvin, Lakeview 774. The box is empty. The ledger is not. I have it. If you want to discuss what David really delivered, be at the reading room of the Newberry Library today at 3 p.m. Come alone. I will be watching. The Newberry Library was a fortress of quiet scholarship, a public space with a labyrinthine interior, a neutral ground, hard to surveil, easy to get lost in, a place for a conversation, not an ambush. I sent both emails, then erased the browser history and left. It was 9 a.m. I had 6 hours. The wait was an agony of paranoia. I moved between busy public places, the atrium of the Art Institute, the main floor of the library, a crowded food court. I bought a cheap prepaid phone with cash. The new email account was the only thing on it. At 1 p.m., a reply popped into the inbox from Arthur Greer, or someone using his account. Ms. Phillips, we should speak. Your uncle's affairs from that time are a closed matter. Whatever document you have is likely a fabrication or misunderstanding. It would be in your best interest to share it with me immediately so I can clarify and put this to rest. Where can we meet? The tone was smooth, dismissive, but the immediate response was a tell. He was worried. I wrote back, a fabrication doesn't prompt a 3 a.m. visit to an empty storage unit. I'll be in touch with terms. No reply. 2:30 p.m. I approached the Newberry, my heart a trapped bird. I didn't go to the reading room. I went to the second-floor gallery that overlooked the lobby and the main stairs. I found a bench partially obscured by a large display case of medieval manuscripts. From here, I could see anyone entering or approaching the reading room door. 2:55. The lobby was quiet. A few researchers came and went. Then I saw him. Not Galvin. The gray-eyed man. He walked in, wearing a different jacket but the same focused calm. He didn't look around furtively. He simply entered, checked the directory board as if confirming the location of the reading room, and started up the grand staircase. He was alone. My breath caught. He'd intercepted the email? How? Was he Galvin, or was he watching Greer's communications? He disappeared into the reading room corridor. I waited, my palms slick. 5 minutes passed. He didn't come out. He was waiting for me, or for Galvin. I had to decide. Walk in, face the one person who had shown a shred of protective instinct, or run, knowing I'd burned my best chance to make contact. Before I could move, a second man entered the lobby. This one I recognized from the storage facility, the shorter, wiry one. He didn't go upstairs. He took a position near the front door, leaning against a pillar, pretending to look at his phone. A lookout. Greer had sent muscle. They weren't here to talk. They were here to take. The gray-eyed man was walking into a trap. A cold clarity washed over me. The gray-eyed man wasn't my enemy. He was a rival, perhaps, but he'd tried to warn me. Greer and his people were the hunters. I had to warn him. I left my perch, moving quickly to a staff-only door I'd scoped out earlier, leading to back stairwells. I emerged on the 3rd floor, then circled back to the 2nd-floor hallway that accessed the reading room from a side entrance. I peered through the small window in the door. The reading room was a vast, silent hall of long tables and green lamps. The gray-eyed man sat at a table near the back, a book open before him, utterly still. He was the only person there. I slipped inside, the door sighing shut behind me. The sound was deafening in the quiet. He didn't look up. I walked to his table and sat down across from him. He finally lifted his gaze. Those pale gray eyes held no surprise, only a weary acknowledgement. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You walked into a trap. The shorter one from the storage unit is downstairs. Look out." A flicker of something, annoyance maybe, respect, crossed his face. "I know." "Then why?" "To draw them, to see who comes." He studied me. "You emailed Greer. And Galvin." At the name Galvin, his eyes sharpened. "What do you know about Galvin?" I left a card on my nightstand. Galvin isn't a person. It's a project name, an internal MDS code for a data siphoning operation David Phillips ran in the late 90s. They sold tailored bundles of information, corporate, municipal, personal, to the highest bidder. Your uncle was the broker. The pieces slammed together with almost physical force. The side projects, the payments, the final delivery. "The ledger," I breathed, "is a list of clients and payments for Project Galvin. David kept a copy. Insurance. When he died, MDS thought it was lost. They've been quietly looking for it for years. Your digital archiving triggered a flag somewhere in their old system, a Phillips name associated with those files. They panicked." "And you?" I asked. "Who are you?" "My name is Eli. I was hired by one of the clients on that ledger, a man ruined by the information David sold. He wants the ledger not for blackmail, but for justice, to expose MDS and Greer. A whistleblower's mercenary. That explained the warning. He didn't want me dead. He wanted the ledger and me alive to lead him to it." "The storage box?" I asked. "Empty for years. David mailed the contents, the physical ledger pages we think, to a safety deposit box under another name. We haven't found it." The quiet of the library pressed in. Downstairs, a hunter waited. Across from me, a man who saw me as a means to an end. "I have a digital copy," I said, "on a USB drive. I mailed another to my father. There's a third in a laundromat ceiling." Eli almost smiled. Resourceful. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, his voice low and final, "you give me the drive. I walk out of here. They'll follow me. You disappear. Really disappear. Change your name. Your father will be safe once the ledger is public. They'll have no reason to pursue you." It was a clean solution. Hand over the poison, let the professionals wage their war. I thought of the violation of my home, the fear in Zoe's eyes, the terrifying freedom of the past day. I thought of my quiet, boring life forever gone. The world had revealed itself to be a web of hidden agendas and silent wars, and I had been a pawn at the center. Giving up the drive might save my life, but it couldn't give me back the person I was 2 days ago, walking home with her earbuds in, oblivious. That girl was gone.